Hi, I'm Joe Sorge, and welcome to the Family Law Report, where we examine the problems and challenges facing our family court system. We're fortunate to have Dr. Jerry Collins on the show today. He's a psychiatrist by training and runs the Maine Guardian Ad Litem Alert, an activist organization that focuses on the problems associated with guardians ad litem in the state of Maine. Jerry, thank you for agreeing to be on the show.
You're very welcome.
How did you first become involved with the family courts?
I'm a grandfather of a child that has been involved in a family court dispute. My son and his then wife went through what I guess would be called a very contentious divorce. And the court appointed a guardian ad litem.
What's a guardian ad litem?
A guardian ad litem may be either a lawyer or a social worker or a member of the mental health professions.
Who hires the guardian ad litem?
The guardian ad litem is appointed by a judge. The guardian ad litem is paid for by the parties to the divorce.
Now, I understand these guardian ad litems are used in custody battles. What's the guardian ad litem's role?
In theory, the guardian ad litem is supposed to be the eyes and ears of the judge. The guardian ad litem would go and collect data for the judge that would, in theory, help him to make a clean decision about what's the child's best interest. Now, that's a very nebulous, very ambiguous, very ill-defined term that has some very deep and, in some cases, ugly roots.
So both parents pay the guardian ad litem's bills?
Sometimes the court puts the bill right to one person, and sometimes they split it down the middle. There's no contract. There's no written contract. It's an open-ended. There's no terminal point. There's no way. In some cases, we tried to terminate the guardian ad litem, and it was not allowed.
Who decides how much the guardian ad litem can charge?
The guardian ad litem.
They can just set their own fees without oversight?
Let me give you an example. I mean, you're showing shock that most people show. The guardian ad litem, let's take a social worker. There is not a social worker in full-time practice in Maine who probably earns more than $35 to $50 an hour. Our guardian ad litem was charging $200 an hour. So you can see, and she had failed her social work test the first time around. These are people with 18 hours training by the court who may come from a legal background or a social work background. They never followed any of the rules and standards, and most of the judges involved hadn't a clue about what the rules and standards were supposed to be. So you can see, what the hell would anybody want to do social work at $35 to $50 an hour when you can do it for $200 an hour and you have nobody supervising you, no oversight, no endpoint in your service, no contract.
If you go to the judge and say, Your Honor, this person normally makes $35 an hour, but she's charging us $200 an hour for the same work, would you please cap her rate to what's fair? What would happen?
The judge, well, first of all, you have to understand that the judge has a closer relationship with the guardian ad litem. She's his buddy. She's his sidekick who is working for him, collecting data, collecting information in the child's best interest. So he is not going to take it kindly if you say, sir, you've appointed a nincompoop.
Well, you don't have to say, sir, you appointed a nincompoop, but you could say, sir, you've appointed someone who's taking advantage of the situation and is charging 4 to 6 times what they normally charge. Can you please fix this?
You can complain to a judge, but it is ill-advised to do so because of the fact that the guardian ad litem and the judge will basically gang up against you in the future. That's the thing that people are terrified of.
You're implying the judge is okay with this price gouging?
Until the recent law that we were instrumental in getting passed was passed, they did bill collecting for the guardians ad litem. The guardian ad litem would tack on to the divorce decree an order that the decree would not be final until the bill was paid. How do you like that?
When you say they did bill collecting, do you mean the judge did bill collecting?
The judge in effect, by building this into the divorce decree and by not allowing the divorce decree to go through, and by putting somebody in contempt of court who denied payment to the poor sweet guardian ad litem, you know, it's basically, I would call it bill collecting.
So if you were to get into an auto accident and you take your car to a body shop, your insurance company will send an adjuster to make sure the body shop's price, quote, is fair. Are you saying that we as citizens can't bring in a third party to oversee what seems to be a conflict of interest for the judge?
And I don't think the judge says you ought to charge $200 an hour, or you ought to, you know, I don't think he directly puts his hands on it, but he basically will not get into price setting.
Now, I would think that with such lucrative plum appointment opportunities, the guardians ad litem would all be competing for the court's business. Do you see any evidence that there might be under-the-table deals or sexual favors or even kickbacks between the guardians ad litem and the judges?
We see certain associations, certain guardians ad litem that are appointed over and over again in certain courts, certain guardians ad litem that appear to have a business association with certain attorney firms. A firm will have within it a guardian ad litem or two as a financial offshoot of the lawyer's practice. So that there is a lot of what you might call an interlocking directorate. There are a lot of interconnections here. Yes, I think that there's a huge, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Now, for the law firms that employ guardians ad litem, how might those law firms exert improper influence over the judge to get the judge to sway in favor of the parent that the guardian ad litem is recommending?
The judges tend to be political appointments. The bar is so involved in reappointment, in nominating and reappointment. They are very wary about doing anything that offends lawyers and guardians ad litem and anybody else who might be lobbying for or against their appointment. Do you want to be a judge again where your term is up after 6 years? Do we do a nomination or do we not? Or do we make a complaint about you through the bar, the whisper campaign, a grapevine campaign? Are we friends or are we not friends?
So the law firms can actually affect whether or not a judge gets a reappointment for another 6-year term?
There are certain firms that play a huge role in family court, way beyond the size of the firm.
It sounds like there's a lot of backroom dealing going on.
Maine's a very small place. There are about 6,000 lawyers in toto in Maine. And people know each other. Professional networks exist. People know each other. Everybody knows the gossip of what's going on, which judge is going to be appointed, why they should or should not, what favors they've done the governor or whoever the political powers that be.
Do you think the Bar Association gets involved in some of this influence peddling?
The bar plays a very special interest kind of role in this whole situation.
Why would the bar take an interest?
Well, it's family law is a very lucrative form of law. You're my teacher, Joe. We've watched your film 6 times. Seriously.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the positive feedback. And I'm glad you're showing it to others and spreading the word.
It is a very, very moving experience for people, even those that haven't been through it. And those that have been through it, I've had one woman who has seen it 3 times. And she breaks down and cries like a baby every time she sees it. But she says it's so moving and it's so powerful.
Well, thank you. I'm glad the film had an impact. So tell me, how's your organization tried to affect change in the state of Maine?
We had a young, very aggressive new senator in the Maine Senate who himself had gone through a guardian ad litem schmozzle, and is one of your greatest spokespeople for the film. And he worked like a dog. We worked with him. There had been a survey done by the OPEGA, the Office of Program Evaluation and Government Accountability, did a survey of guardians ad litem in 2006. And they felt that this was an out-of-control program. And they documented chapter and verse. It's a classic study. We took their recommendations, and Senator Dutremble and I sat down and put the recommendations into the form of a bill that would basically implement the OPEGA recommendations. And they were all squeaky clean recommendations. It was not being mean to anybody. It was very, very thoughtful, careful regulatory stuff. Look, how about a little oversight? What about supervision? They're part of business in every other industry in the world. So the bill was fought tooth and nail by the divorce industry. We had a woman who works as a very competent, very bright woman who works as the spokeswoman for the Chief Justice. I think she almost had a camp cot in the hearing room in the Judiciary Committee. She never left the room and just stood up and testified against anything that was being recommended.
It's shocking to me that the divorce industry can so blatantly argue in favor of these corrupt business practices and then walk around and behave like they're upstanding citizens helping society. So what was the outcome?
The legislature was behind this. We gave them one hell of an education. The testimony, there were times when there were legislators who were crying. And that's not an exaggeration. The stories would, you've taught this stuff. You've taught everybody about it. It's heartbreaking stuff. It's Charles Dickens in the 21st century. A bill was passed. It was nothing very radical, but for the first time in 39 years, there was some regulatory control put on the guardian ad litem program comprehensively. So it went through, but you have to understand how government works. The legislature has the right to pass the law. It then has to be implemented by the branch of government. It has to be put into action by the branch of government for whom the law is written. And there is the rub.
And that's where we're going to end part one of this two-part interview with Dr. Jerry Collins of the Maine Guardian Ad Litem Alert. If you'd like to learn more how the judiciary and the Bar Association reacted to and resisted this landmark legislation, please watch part two of this interview. I'm Joe Sorge, and this is the Family Law Report. Thank you.